Hi there. I'm Gillian Hepburn from Schroders, and welcome to the 6th podcast from the Diversity Project. This comes from the Gender Workstream, where we explore a range of themes and consider how women in particular can be encouraged to join our industry. However, all are always welcome. All of the previous podcasts are also available on our website and on Spotify, which I think is quite cool, really. Over the last few months, we've been looking at celebrating our differences, considering how to be yourself at work. What does this mean? Are there stereotypical females within the asset management and financial services industry? And I would say that my guests up until now have proven that this certainly isn't the case. And we've busted some myths about gender, ethnicity, tongue twister, background and qualifications. And qualifications leads me nicely on to this month's podcast. We're going to take a slightly different direction and look specifically at technology within our industry. And are there careers for women? And if so, how do we encourage them? But is there a perception that it's a male-dominated section of our industry? And how can we encourage women to help make a more diverse workplace, think about a technology background and join us as an industry? So as usual, I'm joined by two women at different stages in their career to talk with me. And as previous podcasts, I'm joined by somebody who already works in the industry and somebody who's considering working in financial services, although as we'll find out, perhaps not in this case. So maybe we can change that in the next 30 minutes. So who's in the virtual studio with me today? Well, firstly, I'm joined by Felicia Meyerowitz Singh, commonly known as Fee. She's the founder and CEO of Aconi Hub and passionate about women joining our industry. I'm also joined by Elora Smart, who's a third-year student from Wick, that's way up north in Scotland, for anybody who's not quite sure. She's currently studying at Abertay University and, interestingly, studying ethical hacking. That's a whole fascinating discussion. So I'm just going to start by opening up with Fee. Fee, welcome to the podcast. Do you want to start by just telling us a little bit about your business and also your journey into financial services?
Yes, thank you very much, Gillian, for having me today. And so I'm Felicia Meyerowitz Singh, CEO and founder at Aconi. And Aconi provides cash solutions, a cash marketplace, and a range of cash management tools to the wealth sector, both to advisors as well as to investment platforms and private banks. We are an API-first company, so everything we do is on a fully integrated basis. But for our advisors, we also offer a rapid, same-day white label portal with a range of tools that they and their clients can use, very specific to the wealth sector. Really, cash for us is a neglected asset. And de facto, we think within 5 years, all platforms will be offering a third-party asset of cash. So how did I get here? Is I used to be a CFO managing cash in the insurance market. And in those days, there were no easy and frictionless solutions which increased returns within our risk profile. And we managed cash, client money, as well as our own cash. And we were in that sweet spot, really. We were too big to do nothing, but too small to qualify for actually any sort of corporate treasury service or anything like that. And my background originally is I first studied as an accountant, and I studied information systems.
Okay.
I worked at PwC, and then transitioned through the insurance market. I'm from South Africa originally. I am very passionate about inequalities. I feel very strongly about it. Partly because obviously I'm South African, and I think we all know the history of South Africa and the problems there and so on. And partly because I'm a woman and I have a young daughter. So I also, on the side of my day job, I work with myself and a friend started something called Hive Founders to support early stage female founders in business. So anyone listening, there is support out there. It's all voluntary, so nothing too fancy, but it's out there. And I work with a number of very other senior women in tech and innovation in an organization called Open 51, where we really raise thought leadership around open banking and open financing, which is changing the way we all work in financial services. So yeah, I do love the financial services sector. Sometimes I love the fact that actually some things are happening behind the scenes that affect all of our lives on a daily basis. And I would encourage anyone to get into it if they can.
Fantastic, great introduction. Thank you for that. I mean, clearly a bit of a tech background going on there, but a really interesting journey, as many of us in the industry have had. So we're going to come on to some of those areas that you talked about in a little bit more detail in this podcast. But let's also introduce Elora. Elora, welcome to the podcast. We're absolutely delighted to have you here. Hello.
Oh, thank you very much for having me.
Not at all, not at all. I do love that accent, by the way, and we'll talk about that as well in this podcast. But ethical hacking, my goodness, tell us what that's all about. It sounds fascinating. What is it, and why did you get into that as a degree?
Yeah, so I've just finished my third year at Abertay University doing ethical hacking. And yeah, so ethical hacking is basically, I mean, it's hacking, but the kind of good side of things. So we're trained up to, go into businesses, companies. It could be literally anywhere. If you have computers or networks, we're basically trained to think like a hacker and go in and try and break into your systems. But instead of actually breaking and doing anything bad or stealing stuff or that, we then give you reports and say what you need to do to fix it. So it's kind of like an offensive way of looking at cybersecurity.
Fascinating. So you are the good guys. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. If we could put it like that. I mean, it's really fascinating thinking about that in relation to our industry, because one of the big challenges is around data security, and clearly when we are the guardians of people's money, I always talk about people's hard-earned cash. It's really important that they feel that it's safe and secure. But also in our industry, there's a huge focus on vulnerability and vulnerable people. And I think that plays right into some of the stuff that you do. But where do students typically end up working with a degree such as yours, Elora?
So I think the majority of graduates end up going on to do kind of consultancy work. I think some have even set up their own companies where we kind of just go in and do odd jobs here and there. But we actually cover in the degree a wide variety of different skills, because obviously ethical hacking applies to everything technology related, whether that's your phones, websites, networks, hardware, even the kind of social side of things. So we kind of have a lot of people go to kind of the defensive side, where they're building software that's secure kind of from the ground up. So there's a lot of different avenues, but primarily I think people go off and do kind of proper security consulting.
Sounds really fascinating. And it's interesting because obviously, when I was a student many years ago, these sorts of exciting opportunities in terms of these degrees just didn't exist, because we probably didn't have an awful lot of technology. So it just shows the pace of change and what's happening in the environment. Fee, if we come to you, what's your views on technology careers for women in this industry? Is there just a myth that, oh my goodness, it's the asset management industry, sounds all very boring, and you just sit in a darkened room, coding systems for dealing and trading, and that's it. How have things changed over the years?
Yeah, so quite significantly in terms of my view of the changes. I think the first thing is, when we think about technology and financial services, they are in every part of our lives. And I think often people forget how reflected they are in every single thing we do. So that really means if you're coming into the sector, there's an opportunity for everyone to work on it in different ways, of course. Sure. And I can see that as we grow, this really fits the younger generation even more. For me, financial services is at the lead, for instance, of something called ESG, which is really around environmental and social impacts of us on society and what we invest in and what we interact with in our financial lives. And I know a lot of young people are very passionate, for instance, about the environment. And there's a way to take that passion and have as broad an impact as possible in financial services. And so part of that is on the tech side. And to be on the tech side, you do not need to be a techie. You don't need to have a developer background or have studied any sort of sciences or engineering. Like, my background is in commerce. And I only did a very short part of my degree in my first undergrad degree in information systems. So there is a huge opportunity across all different range, a very wide range of roles far beyond the typical kind of tech skills that you can come in and add that value. I see that we also have massive change. Like when I first started, it was obviously mainly male dominated. And now we have lots of role models, obviously like yourself, Gillian, or even in early stage startups like myself and many other founders that I know. And you can come in, start your own small business in the space, and then interact with larger players like Schroders, or even start from an academic perspective. There's just multiple avenues, and also many people who can provide a lot of mentorship in that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Why do you think then that maybe not enough women are joining the industry or thinking about that there's opportunities in technology?
I think that they're simply not aware from a very young age. So if you don't have that role model in your life, like I didn't have either tech or financial services role models in my life, then it isn't what you think of instinctively. And when you do think about it, think of about something in high finance or very complicated asset management with Black-Scholes models, which most people aren't interested in studying. And then the same with tech. So both of those are like sectors which almost have a cliched type of person involved with them. That's the one aspect that's very clear. And I think the other thing is the reputations of the sectors are of like long working hours, which sometimes young people don't want, and which even scare women away. And what I can say is, that's not true. You can adapt your hours and you can work on the way you want to work in the sector, whether it's the tech part of financial services or just entering into financial services on its own. And I think that we need to do a lot more at an early stage, at school stage, and university stage as a sector, and interact more with universities. But interesting to hear what Elora thinks. Whether
absolutely, Elora, does some of these points that Fee's raised, do they kind of resonate with you in terms of thinking about our industry?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the point you made of kind of introducing stuff at school level is, kind of hitting the nail on the head. From my sort of tech point of view, when I went into high school, I had absolutely no interest in computers or anything. My parents are both nurses. I really wanted to be a vet for the majority of high school until I actually got the opportunity to take computer science and actually try out things. And then I realized that I really enjoyed it and I was quite good at it. And it just completely changed what I wanted to do. And so the kind of exact same applies. If you're not getting that kind of the kind of message out there and you're not exposing people to things at a younger age, then they may miss out on opportunity because they might think, oh well, that's not for me. And the same with, like you're saying about sort of financial services and things like that. From my point of view, going to uni, I picked ethical hacking partly because of kind of the work that we do in the course. Like I said before, it's so kind of wide ranging. It's very, very practical heavy. We do mostly coursework, which is exactly what I wanted to do because that's what I like doing. I like getting, hands-on and doing things. And also because it sounds cool more than anything. But
does.
so when I was looking, what kind of jobs am I going to get afterwards, I wouldn't have ever really thought about kind of going into the finance industry because, like you said, that's that kind of stereotype of it's boring, it's just it's just guys and it's long hours,
it's just
like you
guys
said,
in suits with umbrellas.
Yeah, and you're just working for like big huge companies where you're kind of just a number. But even just like talking to you guys over the last week, I realized like that is 100% not the case, but it just wasn't really on my radar. And so that kind of getting in sort of younger and at early ages is exactly what needs to be done.
Excellent. I do think ethical hacking just sounds so cool, I have to say.
It's such a cool name. It's crazy.
Such a cool name, right? Gosh, I want to do that. It sounds like it should be in a movie somewhere.
Yeah.
But there you go. I think you've raised a couple of interesting points here as well in terms of flexibility. And Fee, you mentioned that as well in terms of is this industry really delivering flexibility, particularly for women. And I absolutely think that the last year has demonstrated that, hasn't it, in terms of this whole working from home and more flexible environments, you know, and certainly in our business, it's we're absolutely embracing that. Do you think that's a good thing, obviously, for us as an industry in terms of attracting women?
Yes, I mean, I do. I think the more flexibility we have, especially because there tends to be a dropout of women, even the woman entering, there's a dropout, you know, at that age when they're getting married and having children. And I understand it, because unless you have flexibility, trying to juggle the demands of this kind of sector can be a challenge. So I think COVID has shown that we can all work in a very flexible way and still get a normal, productive amount of work completed. And organizations going forward are reviewing their culture of work. And sorry.
No, and I think what you also highlighted when you spoke was this whole range of careers now for women.
Yes.
You know, from that entrepreneur, you know, and Alora mentioned, you know, the big corporates. You know, I work in a big corporate. There's lots of women have some fantastic jobs and loads of opportunities. So today it's great. We've got all ends of that spectrum, because obviously, Fee, your industry is, or your business is, I would say, quite entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
So you're seeing that whole range of opportunities right across the industry. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would say to anyone listening that, you know, if you use the example of data analysis, you don't have to have done some sort of engineering degree to understand that, oh, let me look at data analysis, or even the user experience, or what we call customer experience or customer journey. These are all critical parts of how we interact with technology today. And they're only getting more and more refined as the sector develops and becomes more mature. And none of those, you could have a totally creative mind. They don't need an engineering approach. And in fact, being more creative is what is critical to those kind of roles. And this our financial services sector needs those kind of inputs, that kind of creativity more and more now, because you know, you want to say, well, how am I going to manage my finances going forward in my life, or how am I going to manage my businesses, or how am I going to work with someone else? And all of that is powered by technology. And there's so many components that you can get involved at any aspect, even something as simple as project management or proposition management, where you deal with multiple stakeholders. And it's quite an exciting type of role, I always think, to have, because of your inputs and so on.
Yeah, I mean, I have an English degree, and I never thought in my life that I'd end up working in some technology projects. It's like, it seems bizarre. Laura, what about yourselves? You know, we've talked a bit now about the industry, and you know what, I guess financial services didn't really appear on your list, did it? But do you think that might be a possibility going forward? Are we starting to convince you?
Definitely. I mean, yeah, like I said before, it just kind of wasn't really something on my radar that I'd kind of really thought about. But obviously, I'm going into my last year of uni, and this is the time where I'm going to have to think about what I want to do when I finish and when I have my degree. And so, yeah, listening to you talk and how, like you said, there's just so many different roles. And I think for you, the point you brought up about creativity definitely kind of resonates with me too. Like I said before, my degree is very coursework heavy, it's very hands-on. And I think technology and coding and all sort of things like that is so much more creative than it kind of has you know, it's made out to be. You know, as much as sometimes you are just kind of sat in front of a computer doing stuff, it's so problem solving. A lot of it is very visual, so like we've done a lot of kind of web and app design, which I really love doing, because it's that kind of, you're seeing what you're typing away kind of come alive on the screen, and that's why I really love it. I love getting creative. That's the kind of person I am. That's how I'm very visual. So I think that, you know, really feeds into it too. It's not, you know, it's not a boring, you know.
Absolutely.
Career.
I mean, I'm certainly very passionate about encouraging women and any young person into our industry at the end of the day, but also about helping young people think about saving and investing. And one of the things, Fee, you mentioned was about sustainability. Laura, do you think that, you know, your sort of generation is interested in where their money might end up in sustainability? Because I think that's got a great opportunity for technology, as we've discussed.
Yeah, definitely. I think, out of all the people I know, and yeah, just kind of, my generation as a whole, there's such a big kind of focus on, what are we consuming, what are we doing with our money, what are we buying, and do these companies, and where is our money going in a way that is ethical and sustainable? Because I think there's just been such a big, push for recognizing that we need to take control of the climate emergency, and I think it's just such a good thing that people are starting to recognize that. And I think, yeah, definitely people are going to want to know that where they're putting their money is something good.
Yeah, and Fee, clearly we think that technology can support that. Yeah.
Definitely, and easily, and very personalized, which is why I say there's just so many opportunities in the sector. And I also want to add that if you're looking for something exciting, there is, although people think of financial services like you, Elora, which shows how long it takes to change people's mind, our sector has got parts of it which are rapidly transforming. And that's because there's this demand from all of us, just people like us, different ages, different roles in life, and so on, for that. And so all of the big financial institutions are seeing that, and you're seeing small startups obviously trying to meet those needs as well. And you can participate in whichever part you want, the bigger ones or the smaller, like more nimble.
Yeah, so there's just loads of opportunities. Laura, one of the things we talked about in the prep, which I always love, just getting to know my guests, it's such good fun, is some of the challenges, and we maybe all three of us faced, about things like regional accents, and will we fit in the big city, and or will I have a bit of that imposter syndrome in that I'm from the country, I'm not very sure about this. What was your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, so like I said, I'm from Wick, which is super rural, basically, as far north as you can possibly go without falling off the edge. And yeah, so I even just coming to Dundee, which isn't it's not a massive city in Scotland. Even that was just such a big change, because you're just close to everything, and you can walk everywhere, and you don't have to drive everywhere. And yeah, so I think I was very lucky that I've done a lot of events and some work experience down in London, and it's always that it's so daunting, because for starters it's a big journey for me to get there, and a lot of people who are like, yeah, come and talk at this event, and I'm like, you do realize it's going to take me like a whole day to get there in the first place. So it's that sort of you don't want to be awkward and be like, oh well, actually I'll have to come the day before, and then getting there I have absolutely no sense of direction. So using like the tube and stuff, is that it's really daunting. But I think for me, thankfully, I've never been in a situation where me being so rural, or me having that kind of accent, which is funny that you say, because I don't think I have that heavy of a Scottish accent at all.
No, neither do I.
But yeah, but when I go down south, like I have family down in Kent, they're like, wow, you sound so Scottish. But yeah, I've never had any kind of negative experience of that, but it is that just kind of in the back of your mind, what if they I'm just being awkward, and they don't want me to come because it's so far, and am I going to fit in? But I think it's very much a sort of it's in practice it's always going to be fine, but it's just taking that kind of step of
absolutely. Yeah, Fee, what about yourself? I mean, obviously South African, and female.
Yeah. So interesting. I worked in the insurance market before I started the startup, and there I would say I noticed I was the only sort of young female in management, but I don't felt that I experienced any sort of discrimination, or even being South African. And being in the UK and South African actually I think was an advantage, because people couldn't place me. So they couldn't go, oh, you went to a posh school, you didn't. And it took me 10 years to realize this. They couldn't, they were just like, oh, you're just who you are, which is quite interesting. So it's almost coming from another country was okay. I had to adjust culturally, because the culture in South Africa is very blunt, whereas it's a little bit more subtle here. Just a little. But yeah, so I haven't had that. But in terms of being a woman, the first time I really realized the difference between being a woman and man in the sector was when I started my startup.
Oh, really?
Yes, and there are a lot of differences, which I think if you are going to start a startup, as opposed to just join one,
Yeah, sure.
I think to be aware of, and in fact, there's been a lot of academic research into it as well, as to how women can withstand the gender imbalance within the startup, the tech ecosystem, which is made worse in fintech because tech already has fewer women, then financial services fewer women, then you bring the two together.
Yeah.
So there's a lot I've learned, and if anyone out there is looking at starting a startup, whether it's in fintech or tech, just reach out to me. I'm happy to engage, or go to High Founders. I find that sort of a little bit of sisterhood goes a long way in these situations.
Yeah, that's back to an earlier point. Thanks for that. It's fascinating, but also back to your earlier point about finding senior women in our industry as good mentors. There's plenty of us out there who are always prepared to share our time.
And I think if I just jump in,
yeah, sure.
So from my point of view, to kind of being younger, like on my degree, there aren't that many females. I'm definitely, I was like the only girl who did physics at high school. I've always been sort of in the minority. And I've had people ask me before, has that impacted your studies or anything? And for me, it never has. If anything, people, especially on my degree, we're such a close-knit community of hackers, and everyone's helping everyone else, that it doesn't matter. And I actually run my own company in Cash. We're developing an app to encourage kids to go outside and get active by gamifying walking routes. And so I started that like back in high school, so really, really young. I had a lot of help from kind of people higher up who were women, and I think that support is definitely there, because you just have to reach out for it, because like you said, there are people there who are willing to help. Unfortunately for me, as of yet, I've never had like a bad experience or anything. So I think things are definitely changing, and people are definitely there to help.
Yeah, so it's almost like, take the plunge, and if you don't ask, you don't get. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah.
So I'm so sad because we've only got a couple of minutes to go, and I could go on speaking to the pair of you for a whole other half an hour. But anyway, I'm conscious there's people out there having their lunch probably. So just with a couple of minutes to go, I'm just going to ask each of you, what would be your key message to the people that are listening to this podcast? Laura, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I think my message would be just to give things a try. I mean, like I said before, I'd never even thought about computing as a career until I took part in a competition where I came up with my app, and I'm still working on it to this day. So and yeah, just talking to you guys, I'd never thought about, this kind of industry before, and here I am now thinking about it as a potential career. So just go out and give things a go. I mean, like you said, you don't ask, you don't get, and what's the worst that could happen? You're always going to learn something.
Absolutely, great advice. Bea, what about yourself?
Yeah, so mine is just what I hope that resonates with anyone, is that our industry is exciting and innovative. And what's important is more to also spread the word. Is, if you're like, actually, I'd like you to talk to a bunch of students at my uni, or, a bunch of, girls who I know, whatever the case may be. We always know people who'll do it, or we'll do it ourselves, on a Zoom or in person, because it's very important for us to actually get that out there and change the perception we have of financial services and tech.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. We are absolutely demonstrating as well today that we are an inclusive and diverse industry for a whole range of people. So thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. I've had such good fun. I've so enjoyed speaking with you and exploring where we are as an industry. And I think one that welcomes a diverse range of women with different skills and talents. And thank you to everybody else for listening today. We hope that we've helped maybe some young people to think a little bit more about financial services and whether there's some opportunities for you to join us as a career. It's also important, I think, to point out that careers don't always go in straight lines. You might join our industry or already be in our industry not thinking that moving into the tech part of it is for you. But again, perhaps that's something that you want to think about as you go into the weekend. So do join us next month. We'll be talking about skills, so completely different topic. We'll be exploring a new virtual workshop initiative that's been launched in partnership with the Diversity Project and 60 companies, where we've come together to offer an exciting programme covering a range of topics to make sure that we get the right skills in place for a career in financial services. So with that, I will sign off and say thank you once again to the amazing guests, to Fee and Laura. Thank you so much for joining me. And I look forward to speaking to everybody next month.
Thanks, Gillian.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.